coordinated by Philippa and Sam that you met yesterday in an introduction of the presentation and discussion we have here today. And the idea is for people to participate in deep debates about science and art interaction in a collaborative way. So Philippa and Sam, thanks again for coming, and let's start.
Thank you again for coming. What I might do, because if people often come late, they can only move in as far as someone's sitting.
Yeah,
so if we move over a little bit further, then there's room for them to come in.
Just to leave these free for people that will come late.
Yeah.
O pessoal vai chegar tarde, vai tentar sentar por aqui, né? Boa, Sam. Muito bem. You're always seeing the stage. That's marketing.
Hopefully the setup is good for discussion as well, so people can make comments and ask questions. Thank you, Maira, once again for inviting us here, and thank you for this extra time today to be able to talk with the people here about art-science collaboration. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about our work, but we're also interested in your experiences, and maybe make some interesting discoveries or discourse on what art-science collaboration can be and what's at stake. The kind of schedule for today is that we'll sort of pick up where we left off yesterday. With so the first half of this forum will share some further collaborations. Feel free to ask questions during that as well. But we feel that by introducing the collaborations that we ran earlier this year, we can show other ways of working that exceed our own efforts. So we're going to introduce a project that we ran in February in Wellington, 2010, called the Waking Incubator, where we brought 6 artists and 6 scientists together, and they worked for a week together in a laboratory setting and produced new collaborations. And we'll introduce this for its aims. We'll show the documentary for the incubator, and we'll show some of the collaborative outputs. That's okay, it's fun. No, otherwise we can't see each other. Let me just open a little more.
Sim, é melhor, senão só pouquinho mais. Deixa fechado, senão não.
So maybe você pode abrir essa aqui because he's not capturing the lines of the slides.
We'll talk briefly also about Sleepless 3 Transgressions, which is the work you might have seen on Wednesday afternoon. Philip and I were performing downstairs with the hurdy-gurdy, and then we'll really open the discussion up with a lot of provocations and questions to you and questions from you. Okay? And they'll take up the second half of this forum. But yeah, feel free to ask these questions.
So we introduced this set of ideas yesterday at the end of the session, and some of these ideas coalesced for us at the conference that we were at with Maira in Benas last year. And I thought just to illustrate a little more, I would talk to you about some examples that were very clearly, I think, of these. If you wish. So there was one example, Sam, you can read the names because I'm going to walk away from the computer.
Yep.
But there was one example where we had the artist was a woman who does hand-drawn animation.
Wendy Morris.
Wendy Morris. And the scientist
Johann Wagemans.
was a vision specialist, and he used equipment to track the gaze of people, track their eye movements as they were watching the animation. And so that information, that scientific information, enabled the animator to change the way she animated, knowing more about the way people actually looked at the movement she was creating in her animation.
What did she do?
What did she use?
What is the specialization of these artists?
Animated
She's
film.
an animator, so she draws pictures, series of pictures.
Okay.
That then make an animation. It's not computer animation, it's hand-drawn, so she draws hundreds of pictures showing the motion. But where you change to show motion in those pictures, she is able to adapt to the way human beings look and scan the images by having this information from the science. So this is an artwork which really belongs to the artist. The creative project belongs to the artist. She is drawing animations, hand animations, hand-drawn animations. Probably this will not have much influence at all on the scientist. The information that he collects, watching how, scanning how people are actually moving their gaze across the images. It's not stuff which is very inspirational or movement science. It won't change his practice very much, but it certainly makes a difference to the artist. This was a really interesting project, and so the example here is actually a magician. The artist is a magician.
Miguel Angel Guia.
Yeah, who specialises in what we call in English sleight of hand, things that you see appear from here to here.
Oh,
You know how that is.
magic.
Magician.
Magic.
Yeah. And so he was explaining to the scientist how he made these things seem to appear and disappear. So he explained the magic.
Yeah.
And the scientist was a vision scientist
Susana Martinez Conde
Yeah.
from Phoenix, Arizona.
who was interested in how the brain processes light coming into the retina. So what you see is not what is coming into your eyes. What you see is what your brain interprets. And this was very clever because the way the magician from traditional magic tricks understood how to trick the visual system was actually providing the scientist with new models of how the brain processes visual information. Using these very old tricks that magicians have known about for centuries was actually giving the scientist new theories about how the brain processes visual information. And this is a very unusual example where the art is actually developing scientific theory. It was really fascinating. Would this change the practice of the magician? Probably not. But certainly it has a very big impact on the practice of the scientist. So those are sort of examples to try and understand. I think I said yesterday that we like trying to be in this space, and in the works that we've done, we're trying to sort of sometimes we're here, sometimes we're here, sometimes we're here. I think Sleep Wake, the theatre piece, is probably the one which is most in this mode, and mainly because Sam is very generous as an artist, and he will let me be part of the creative process. So when he developed the set, and when we had the other performers come in, I was able at each stage to give feedback about the performance and the work as the artists were developing it. And so I was able to be an integral part, a very small part, a very minor part, but part of the iteration as the creative process from the artists was being developed. And that is a very privileged position for scientists, and I think that one of the most important things about trying to work in this mode is that we have to have a great deal of trust in one another, because a lot of artists, when we talk like this, say, but you cannot interfere in my artistic process. That is sacrosanct. You cannot be part of my artistic process. And in some forms of art that would not be feasible. But I think that that was our example that came closest to. And there are lots of ways in which being involved in a state like theatre has affected my practice as a scientist. And there are lots of ways I think that it's affected Sam as an artist.
Yeah, completely. So we decided that we'd try to introduce new collaborations to some of these models, and try to introduce new artists and scientists to one another to work together. And this is the sort of the first idea behind our waking incubator. And these are our aims. So, as I said, to foster, we were really interested in fostering and developing new collaborations between speech science and performing arts, two very specific disciplines within science and arts. We also wanted to include new practitioners and new disciplines in our established discourse on sleeping and waking. So Philippa and I already had a lot of this sort of ideas and discoveries that we've talked about yesterday, and we are interested in introducing new people to that. We want to expand and challenge individual artistic and scientific practices through transdisciplinary dialogue. So the things that Philippa and I had learnt from our collaborations, that she was just hinting at before, we wanted to expand and challenge other artists and scientists with those discoveries. And finally, we wanted to share the above outcomes with a live audience in the form of an open laboratory and document the process in a DVD with a reference to future collaborations. So at the end of this week-long workshop, we had an open lab, an open laboratory, where all the collaborations were shown to a public in whatever form they were in. If they were half finished, a little idea, whatever. And we also had a discussion as well with the public. And so those are the aims for this incubator, that we invited these 6 artists and 6 scientists to participate in. And I think this is a good point now just to show that documentary. It's about 15 minutes long, but it helps really illustrate what happened in that week. Has everybody seen it downstairs? Everybody?